Welcome back to Broncos Country Tonight. Steve Atwater in studio with us. We're going over the 53-man roster. And now let's switch over to the defensive side of the ball, Steve. The big surprise, I think that basically everybody had this guy on the roster. He ended up being released. He came back on practice squad. We'll get to that in a second. But Devontae Bassey was a guy that I think most of us watching training camp every single day like we did thought he was in the safe column, especially after they moved on from Isaac Yiadom. Really felt like that was his roster spot. What did you think about that move?
Yeah, I was extremely surprised. But, you know, knowing that there was some competition at that position, knowing that they drafted a cornerback in the third round and Michael Ojemudia to play cornerback, I can't say it's super surprising, but I was surprised.
Well, and it kind of reminds me of like Todd Davis. Like we can come back after the fact and say, okay, I can see where they got there. So with Bassey, it also coincides with the play of Devontae Harris, who played really well down the stretch of training camp. Essang Bassey took some big steps forward at the end of training camp, and Michael Ojemudia got healthy. Yeah. So you can, like I said, after the fact, kind of reason it out, because a lot of people were like, are you surprised? I was like, well, I'm surprised because we had him on. We had him as the third corner for most of camp. But again, camp is not just the first week. It's not the first week and a half. It's the entirety, and the coaching staff loved the way that Devontae Harris and Essang Bassey, as well as Michael Ojemudia getting healthy, they love the way they closed.
But in addition to that, I mean, there's a lot that goes on in the locker room and the meeting rooms that we have no idea about. And apparently Essang Bassey, Devontae Harris, Michael Ojemudia, they did something that made the coaches want to say, hey, I want to keep these guys ahead of Devontae Bassey, at least for right now. Now, that may change with Devontae Bassey because, you know, Devontae Bassey can play. He was a starter for us last year. He can play in this league. So I think we're fortunate to be able to get him back as a practice squad player.
Another secondary player that I was a little surprised he made the roster, but again, it has to do a little bit with the way they play the entirety camp, is Duke Dawson. I thought Duke Dawson, mostly third team, he seemed to have some struggles out there to my eye watching training camp. He's a little bit of a hybrid player for the Broncos. Do you think that versatility helped his cause?
Oh, definitely did. Being able to play in the slot. I think he'll pop over to the safety position if they need him. And I liked his play last year. He was very physical in the slot as the slot cornerback. He got a chance to get his hands on some receivers and hold them in their position. So I think he's still developing at that position. And I think he's going to help.
Now, we mentioned Essang Bassey, 16 out of the last 17 years that a college free agent has made this roster. What does that mean to you when we say something like that? Because that seems kind of impressive, and especially considered the situation with no OTAs, no mandatory minicamp. The offseason was all via Zoom. You come in here and you have a very short window to supplant, as we mentioned, several other cornerbacks. It wasn't until the very end where the Broncos kind of tipped their hand a little bit that they liked him. What do you think about just saying out loud 16 out of 17 years?
Yeah, well, I got to say, Matt Russell, John Elway, they're doing a heck of a job of finding talent out there. And we watched film on Essang Bassey. The only thing that we didn't like about him, he used to duck his head down some when he tackles. Hopefully he doesn't do that right now. I don't want him to get injured. But in terms of coverage corner and doing all the other things, and he's not afraid to tackle either. I mean,
not at all.
He's physical. So, I can see why they made that choice. And it is kind of crazy because you weren't able to see him go live in the NFL, but apparently he did a lot of things right, and the coaches feel comfortable, and I think he's going to be a good one.
And it's funny to me because it seems like Vic Fangio likes to collect slot corners. Like he just likes slot corners.
Right. With
Bryce. Bryce. And last year you had Chris, who's one of the best slots. And I mean, of course, he came into that team, but it just seems like he has a knack for seeing the talent of slot corners.
And that's probably the most difficult position on the field as a cornerback, because you had to cover the super speedsters. Now the guys in the outside have a rough time too because they're normally on the bigger, stronger receivers. But the guys in the slot, they got to have that speed and quickness, and just know where they are on the field and have a great awareness. And Essang Bassey has that, and it's going to be fun watching them develop.
Of course, before the cut down, Todd Davis was released. Josey Jewell is now going to be starting there in your base. You're going to see Mark Barron in nickel. What do you think that mix is going to be like this year? I think we're all still trying to get a little bit of a grasp on what that looks like.
Yeah, first off, man, I'm going to miss Todd just personally.
Of course.
He's a heck of a guy, heck of a leader for this team. Wish him the best. He had a great run here. And, unfortunately, the injuries, that takes the toll, man. And that's the thing that happens to a lot of people, man. When you have too many injuries, the careers don't last as long. Josey Jewell, he's going to have to step up and show that he's cut out for this job and that he can hold on to it. I know last year Alexander Johnson came in for him and was able to stay in there. So, he can't get hurt for one, and then he's got to make sure that he continues to develop and continue to get better because, hey, Mark Barron, Austin Calitro, I know they're not coming here to sit on the bench. They want to be that starting position as well. So he's got to fight those guys off and show that he deserves to be the starter. Yeah,
it's certainly going to be an interesting challenge early on because Mark Barron is kind of a little bit more your coverage inside linebacker, where Josey Jewell is going to affect the run quite a bit more. And you think with the Titans coming up here, that Josey Jewell in that role is going to be very valuable, especially against Derrick Henry.
Everybody's going to be valuable and try to stop Derrick Henry. And you heard Jarrell Casey say it in his press conference a little earlier. It's going to be vital that the defensive linemen keep those and the linebackers keep those guys going laterally. You don't want them to get vertical. He gets vertical early, it can be trouble.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and again, you got the Titans coming up. Going to be a test for the Broncos. Home field advantage going to be a little bit different this time around. Maybe you just lean on the low oxygen. I guess that's what they're going to do.
Yeah, exactly. When they come out of the locker room, they'll see how high they are up, and they'll be like, oh, man, I'm losing my breath.